Hello, everyone, and good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for EarthEcho Expeditions virtual field trip, Aquaponics 101. My name is Jacqueline Durakis, and I am the Expeditions Manager for EarthEcho International. We are so excited to have classrooms from all over the globe joining us today to learn about aquaponics. This live event is part of our 2017 EarthEcho Expedition Water by Design. Water by Design is a set of videos, lesson plans, design challenges, and other tools to support students in the exploration of water scarcity, water resource management, and drought. These materials are brought to you on our website for no cost, thanks to our sponsor, the Northrop Grumman Foundation. It also includes a guide to understanding and building your own aquaponics system, which will be handy for a lot of you after today's live event. Now, before we get started, we have a little bit of housekeeping. We love participation from all of you watching. So we ask that you ask questions. If you're watching on YouTube, you can use the Q&A app. And if you're watching directly from EarthEcho's website, you can use the Google form that is below your viewer. Please go ahead and post questions now or at any point during the virtual field trip. We will be answering questions during a few spots in the event and have set aside time at the end for additional Q&A. First, we would like to welcome Mrs. Reggie's Marine Science class from Riverview High School in Sarasota, Florida. Okay, hi guys, are you there?
Hi. Yeah, hi.
Hi. Say hi. How are you today?
We're doing good.
How are you?
Great, thanks for joining us. We'll come back to you for some questions in a bit, okay?
All right.
All right, and our special guests and hosts for today are Mr. Jim Trogdon, middle school science teacher and 2017 EarthEcho Expedition Fellow, as well as Mr. Paul Brentlinger, who is the CEO of CropKing, and they are coming to us live from Coventry Middle School in Ohio. So go ahead and take it away, gentlemen.
Hey, how's everyone doing? I'm Jim Trogdon, and with me is...
I'm Paul Brentlinger from CropKing. We're happy to be here.
Very excited. So Sarasota, I love Sarasota. My family was a circus family, believe it or not, and so I have roots there. I know people are going to find that hard to believe, but it is true. So anyway, I was lucky enough. We're here in Coventry, Ohio, in Akron, the Portage Lakes region. And so we are so fortunate to be in an aquatic ecosystem here. We do a lot of cool things with that. But last fall, actually about a year ago, I was really lucky to be invited to the EarthEcho Expedition in Southern California, Water by Design, with some amazing educators throughout the country. And part of our homework was aquaponics, and to see if we could build a little system in our classroom that every teacher would feel comfortable with having in their classroom, that their students could manage that and see what happens and tweak it. And we definitely did that. So we set up a system when we got back last year, and it seemed to work out great. And Paul here helped me out a lot with some things, and he's the expert on hydroponics and aquaponics. And I think, talking a little bit about that, we have aquaculture and plus hydroponics equals aquaponics. Is that right, Paul?
Yep, that's a great way to say it.
So and I think you guys probably know aquaculture is growing fish for food, and of course hydroponics is growing plants without soil.
All right, so did you guys want to go into a little bit about how you set up your aquaponics system and how it produces food?
Yes.
Yeah, happy to show it. So in the system behind me, this is very simple. We went to a local hardware and we got about 30 feet, I think, maybe 20 feet of 3-inch PVC pipe, and just used some pipe cutters, drilled some 2-inch holes, I believe, in the PVC pipe, so we could set our plants in here. We have a 10-gallon fish tank. Now we're raising goldfish. That's our fish source. We don't have tilapia in here right now because basically you need about, I think, about a gallon of water per inch of fish. So we have 3 fish in here that are 3 inches long, so we're good with the 10-gallon tank going on here. So the fish are in here. We're using, very simply, we're using the fish waste to feed these lettuce plants that we have planted. And it's pretty amazing already. I was just showing Paul, when we planted these last Tuesday, this is the size they were. I don't know if we're going to wheel in there. They're that size. And so since Tuesday, this is what we have. So that's pretty big difference there, if you guys can see that. Can you guys in Sarasota see that difference? Yeah. So pretty amazing the amount of nutrients that are helping that lettuce grow. So that's pretty cool. Yeah, so we have some roots hitting that. The water flows through, and it's on a gravity-based system here, so we had to figure out the correct slope for this pipe, and so the students did that in their math class. And I think we had maybe a 1-inch slope per 3 feet of pipe, something around that. And then the water pumped out, just a cheap aquarium pump in here. It's pumped out through the tank, up here through these 2 tubes. The water flows through about this deep, and then it ends up coming here, all cleaned. The roots cleaned that water out of all the fish waste. So very simply, that's what's happening here.
And do you want, oh, go ahead, Paul.
I was just going to say, so the basics of aquaponics is the combination of aquaculture and hydroponics. And with hydroponics, we're growing without soil, which means that we have to provide all of the nutrients directly to the roots of the plant, so it's easy for them to take it up. And in this type of a system, an aquaponic system, instead of putting synthetic fertilizer into that recirculating tank, as we would with a traditional hydroponic system, the fish poop, basically, is being broken down by beneficial bacteria, and we're turning that ammonium and nitrites into usable fertilizer forms for the plants. And so it's a symbiotic relationship of the plant's roots are filtering and cleaning the water, and the fish are producing fertilizer for those plants. And so in theory, it's a wonderful continuous system to where we can produce both protein and vegetables out of one system.
Thank you so much. I'm going to go to Mrs. Reggie's class and see if they have any questions.
Would it be more efficient to use like tilapia, like a more dirty fish like koi, than like goldfish?
Yes. In a traditional commercial system, you're going to see something more like a tilapia as the traditional fish that's being used, just because they have a faster growth rate. They produce more waste than a goldfish. People kind of refer to them as like the rat of a fish. You know, they can eat almost anything. They can survive in a lot of different environments. So they're a tougher fish than, say, trout would be another commercialized fish that is used in aquaponic systems, but they're harder to manage than a tilapia is. So yes, typically you would see tilapia, but I've seen everything from bass and trout, sturgeon, crayfish, or shrimp that are also used in aquaponic systems.
Any other questions?
Yeah. What kind of lights do you use?
That's a great question. What kind of lights do you use?
That is a great question. And that was, you know, it's a learning process for everyone because we were new to it. And so we have, we're lucky we have a row of east windows here facing a lake, and we had this beautiful sunshine this morning, but of course in Ohio, we're not going to get that all the time. And so we do have a small LED grow light up here, and we turn that on, and that light stays on from, I come in the morning around 6:30, and I turn it off when I leave around 3:30 in the afternoon. And well, I also leave the classroom lights on as well, because we have classes who come up and visit, and some teachers teach in this classroom, so they like to check out what's happening in here. So that's what we have. I mean, this is just, you know, like a $15 grow light up here, and it seems to do the trick. I think Paul can say you don't need as much light for lettuce as we do for like tomatoes, or
certainly lettuce being a 100% vegetative crop, we're not growing it for the fruit that it produces. We want the leaves off of lettuce, so the amount of light isn't as imperative, especially in an educational setting like this. A lot of times with a commercialized aquaponics system, you might see the growing trays actually in a greenhouse, and so they're getting natural light. And then in addition to that, you might also see either LEDs like what Mr. Trogdon has here, or high-intensity discharge lights like a high-pressure sodium or metal halide would also be used in a commercial system. When it comes to the educational style that you're doing here, having less light or more light is going to either speed up or slow down the growth of the plants. But because it's lettuce, if you want it to grow slower, it's not a big deal if you don't have a ton of light on it.
What happens when the plants get a bit too big?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
What happens when the plants get a bit too big, like for like the actual system? Will you like upgrade it or?
So growing lettuce, a harvestable head of lettuce is typically going to be somewhere in that 6 to 15 ounce range.
Yeah.
And so if you can see here, these are spaced about 6 inches apart from each other. And so between 6 and 8 inches in the spacing is what a fully mature head of lettuce is going to take up. So in this system, in theory, it shouldn't get too big for the system before it's ready to harvest and eat.
So it really changes on like what type of plant you're growing, like the size of the aquaponics system that you're using?
Absolutely, it would absolutely determine the size of planter that you're utilizing. So for lettuce, we're going to use channels that are long, skinny, and shallow. You know, this is a full-grown or close to full-grown head of lettuce. This one's probably only about 5 ounces. So I mean, it could have stayed in a system for a little bit longer and continued to grow. But if you were doing tomatoes, there would be a number of things that we would have to take into consideration. One being a tomato plant where we're harvesting the actual fruit, it's going to need more fertilizer than a lettuce plant will need over the course of its life. And so you don't usually see fruiting crops being done in aquaponic systems because getting that much fertilizer into a system can be somewhat of a challenge. So typically we're going to see basil, mint, different herbs, lettuce, things like that grown in an aquaponic system. But you could use larger pots if you just were doing it, again, from an educational standpoint. You could just have a larger pot that it recirculated if you're trying to grow a tree or something along those lines.
Any other questions, Mrs. Reggie's class?
Yeah, go ahead. You speak loud. Is there a point at which adding too much fish waste will actually like hinder the production of plants?
I'm sorry, say that one more time.
Is there a point where adding like too much fish food will actually hinder the production of the plants?
Absolutely. It would hinder the production of the plant potentially, and it can also cause an unfavorable environment for the fish as well. So basically, as the fish poop, we're getting that ammonium and nitrates and nitrites in the water. And if those get too high, that can be bad for the fish. If those get out of balance, it can certainly be bad for the plants as well. That's probably the most difficult aspect of aquaponics, is getting that system in balance where you've got the right amount of fish producing the right amount of poop and the right amount of bacteria to turn that poop into fertilizer so that your plants can use it to grow. That's realistically the hardest part of aquaponics.
We found that out here as well. I mean, we feed very minimal amount of high protein. I just feed a little bit of powdered krill, and then I also in we call it our piggy bucket in the cafeteria. Anyone who doesn't eat their salad that doesn't have dressing on it, I just clip a little bit of romaine lettuce and with a string, and then I just put it in the tank because they love to eat vegetation. And so obviously duckweed and water lettuce, you know, they would eat around here in the lake system, but they'll eat this. So I just leave it in here for maybe 10 minutes. Otherwise, you know, it's going to start to rot, and then we get decomposition and that happening in there. So the students know the balance there. So that's a really good question. Thank you for asking it.
Thank you, guys. Those were wonderful questions. Those were great. We did get a question from Mrs. Martinez's class at Harlow Elementary, and her students would like to know, what are the easiest vegetables to grow in a system, and that her students want to grow the ingredients to make fish poo salsa, and they want to know if the veggies will taste normal.
So that is an excellent question. And if the system is balanced properly, yes, you should not be able to tell that they were grown using fish waste as their fertilizer. Now, we've had small hobby systems at CropKing, which is the company that I represent, for a long time. And there have definitively been times where that lettuce has had a bit of an odor, a fishy odor. I can't say that it tastes like fish poop because thankfully I've avoided eating that my entire life. So I don't 100% know that it tasted like it, but it definitely had an odor that you were kind of less appetizing than you would want. So it certainly can go wrong, but again, it's back to that balancing of everything in the system. As far as the easiest vegetables to grow, it's going to, again, be those leafy crops. So all of your different lettuces, bok choys, cabbages, things like that will all do well. Basil, cilantro, dill, we've got a few samples of that here. And then we've also got cucumbers and tomatoes and peppers, which we grow hydroponically in the greenhouse, but are harder to accomplish on an aquaponic system just because we can't get the level of fertilizer high enough typically out of a fish system as we can in traditional hydroponics.
And we had another question from Hampton Cove Middle in Alabama, and they were wondering if you could tell us a little bit about how you manage the water quality of your aquaponic system.
It's you know, it's very self-maintaining when you set the system up. Once you get it flowing, and that's the whole idea of this closed system where this water is cleaned as it goes through these roots. And when it comes out these tubes, it's cleaning that wastewater. And of course, your plants are using the waste from the fish. So once you get that balance of the right amount of food for your fish in there, then you're okay. We test the water weekly. The students test our water, and we use EarthEcho's water monitoring challenge kit. And so the students all have that journaled, and we keep an eye on that. But you know, here's the thing. I don't know if this is a test that you guys use or not, but it smells really good when you walk by it. It smells fresh. So I'm assuming that's going to be a good thing. I know probably a lot of you guys out there watching have had goldfish bowls, and they get really nasty in a couple weeks if you don't manage that water, or you get more oxygen into it. There's no, it's stagnant. So that's the kind of thing you watch for.
I represent the commercialized side of agriculture, and so that's kind of where my mind is always coming from, is the commercial scale systems. And so in this system, you know, we've just got a basic aquarium filter, and you guys are all familiar with that spongy material that's in a fish filter. That's acting as a biofilter. So as that water goes through there and the fish waste goes through there, there's a bunch of bacteria in that sponge material that's breaking that down. And when you look at a commercialized system, you'll see these big tanks, and they're nothing but filter material. And that's where the bacteria lives. And so one of the ways that you maintain water quality is by having enough biofilters so that you can have that good beneficial bacteria to break down that waste. And not only convert it into usable food for the plants, but also avoid having it stink. That stink is a matter of too much of it building up in your system and having not enough bacteria to process it. So it's just like outside in a compost pile. You know, compost piles that have a lot of manure in them don't smell like cow poop most of the time. They smell like a real earthy, fresh dirt smell. And that's because of those bacteria breaking down those other bacteria that create smells.
Great, thank you. We have a question from Coventry Middle, and they want to know what happens to the plant if it is left in an aquaponic system too long.
Oh, so you have to know exactly the right time to harvest. So, I mean, that happened, and they start to yellow, and they have a lifespan like any other living thing. So we usually, it's been about maybe 45 days, 40 days is when we harvest our lettuce. That seems to be the peak. Is that about right, Paul?
That's going to be fairly typical for a head of lettuce, somewhere in that 30 to 57 day range, depending upon light levels and fertilizer and CO2 and all the other variables that go into it. Typically with lettuce, one of the things that you'll see if you leave it in a system too long is it will actually go to seed. It'll shoot a flower up from the center of that head of lettuce, and it'll produce seed pods, and then it'll go to seed. And then if you were to eat the lettuce, it would be bitter. So assuming that your fertilizer and light and everything else is right, you won't necessarily see the plant start to die off. The first thing you're going to see is it's going to shoot a flower up. And, you know, when was the last time you ate lettuce that had a flower on it? It's just that past its prime, typically. Same with basil. We have a horticulturist, and one of his jokes that he always asks the class is, how many people like basil berries? And nobody raises their hand. They're like, what are basil berries? Well, that's the seed that a basil plant will eventually produce if it's left in a system too long.
Interesting. Thank you. That was a great answer. Mrs. Reggie's class, do you guys have any other questions?
Yeah, like, so in order to help like the ammonium and nitrate levels, would it be all right if I added like media to the tank, like even like gravel or like some small objects? Like, would that help at all, or?
It's not necessarily going to help. I mean, as you can see, there's some, you know, traditional aquarium stone in the bottom of this. Now, if you were forcing the water through that, then it would act as surface area for bacteria to cling onto and create some of that biodigestion. But because it's just laying at the bottom of the tank and you're not getting a lot of circulation through there, it's not going to be as beneficial as, say, a tank full of that same media that you were forcing that water through. Now, if you had one of those bottom of the aquarium filters where it pulls everything through the bottom, then having that media down there, the extra surface area would allow more area for those bacteria to live.
And that's the purpose of like a charcoal biofilter
Correct.
or to run through. So
That was a really great question. Thank you. Did you have a follow-up, or are you okay?
I have another question. Like, would you consider that like commercial hydroponics to be more or less efficient than like the system that you have there?
That's a really good question. So as CropKing, we focus mainly on hydroponics from a commercialization standpoint, but we do that for a couple of reasons. One, as CropKing, our goal is to help our growers be successful. And so we want to be able to teach you how to do what we're selling you the products for. And so aquaponics is definitely more difficult to get balanced because we can't use the same tools. So in a greenhouse situation, if I go in and I take a tissue sample of my tomato plants and they show that they're deficient in nitrogen or calcium or one of the other elements that plants use to grow, I can go pull that element off the shelf, typically in a powder form, and add that to my fertilizer tank so that it goes directly to the plants. In a aquaponics system, I have to also be considering the fish that are in there. And so if I just dump a bunch of fertilizer in there, I might affect the fish in a negative way. So efficiency is going to be a harder question to answer. Simplistic, I would have to say a hydroponic system is going to be simpler to manage. Certainly the large-scale aquaponics growers, farmers out there are going to suggest that the benefit that they're getting is that they don't have to pay for fertilizer. So they're going to save money on fertilizer by using the fish waste, whereas I'm going to go to the store and buy my fertilizer to make sure that I can give them what I know I need to when I need to.
And the other thing, too, just to kind of piggyback on that, what Paul had said, is that I had a student just this afternoon ask, Mr. Trogdon, could this be a solution to world hunger? And I just like, that kind of, I was speechless for a little bit, and I thought that's exactly what EarthEcho is doing, and that's why they do what they do. Because you want to get that spark, create that spark of interest for a student so that you guys can take the reins and be world changers with something like this. Because we're creeping up on 8 billion people on this planet, and we have to start thinking of how we're going to efficiently feed those people.
Absolutely. And it's kind of a progression. You know, if you go back 75, 100 years, we didn't understand hydroponics well enough to make it a commercialized industry like it is today. And aquaponics, while it's not uncommon today, it's still early in its developmental stages. You know, whereas there might be 3,000 acres of hydroponic production in the U.S., there might only be 20 or 30 acres of aquaponic production being done in the United States. And it's not because it doesn't work, it's because there's just not as much knowledge base out there around aquaponics as there is around hydroponics. So Will we get there? Most likely. I mean, there's a lot of research being done. There's a lot of university levels that are focused on figuring out the best way to accomplish this. And the concept of growing protein alongside of vegetables is certainly what's driving that, the ability to provide the entire food pyramid out of one system, basically.
Fabulous. Thank you guys so much. We have a question from St. Edward's School in Vero Beach, Florida. And they're interested to know what's inside the little pots in the aquaponics system. Is it soil, rocks? What are you using?
Yeah, it's actually, and I'll just walk around here so we can kind of hold it up and see. I don't know. It's called Hydroton. I'm just throwing it everywhere. It's the acronym is LECA, or L-E-C-A, and that stands for Light Expanded Clay Aggregate. And so basically, it's a clay that they put up to a very, very high temperature, and then it almost pops, kind of like popcorn. So when you look at the size of it, it's much lighter than it would appear to be because there's a ton of air in it. And that's why we use it for a hydroponic medium, is because it has a lot of space inside of it for roots to grab onto, for air to be in. And so as we're circulating this water, we want there to be a lot of oxygen available to those roots as well.
Great. Thank you. So we had some questions come in through our online form. And one of them is, can you use different types of aquatic life other than fish in an aquaponics unit? And then the other one that I think is an important question is, what is the average cost to build and maintain an aquaponics unit for your classroom?
Yeah, that's good. So, I mean, one of the things that teachers out there will want to do is to download the Aquaponics 101, because everything is in there that you need. The list of materials that we use, the cost of them. And so we just made it into a little booklet here and just bound it. And so it's just nice to have around. Everything for your lesson is in there. I just told the kids when we were talking about insects and aquaponics, you could almost teach every standard in life science with aquaponics and insects.
It's why it's become such a desire from a school standpoint to have in their classrooms, because it touches so many of the curriculum standards that you educators have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. Mm-hmm. I think, you know, and you can correct me, but to build a system like this, you're probably less than 150 bucks.
Oh, for sure. It's under $100.
Now, to compare that to something, CropKing does offer an aquaponics system. It's significantly larger than this. It's a 200-gallon tank for your fish, and it's a 4-foot by 8-foot growing bed that you would grow your plants in. And it comes with biofilters and stands and things like that. And I want to say that's right around $3,000. So the difference between building one, accessible to everyone, if your class goes out and writes a big grant, then you can buy a larger scale system that you can utilize.
Yeah, I mean, this is a great grant project here. And when you're writing the grant, you can use things, right? These are free. I mean, every teacher should be taking advantage of this, because I wrote a grant using this and I already got it. So, and to buy more materials so other teachers can put them up, not just in science classes, but we have a language arts teacher who wants one, a math teacher who wants one, and they can do it.
The other part of that question was other aquatic life in an aquaponics system. And certainly, again, I think I may have said earlier, but I've seen them with shrimp, crayfish, lots of different styles of fish, lobster. So yes, you can use other aquatic life to do it. Now, I've never seen anything really unique, but at the end of the day, anything that's going to produce poop that could then be turned into fertilizer by bacteria could be used to fertilize plants. At the end, it's going to be all about balancing, having enough fish life or aquatic life to produce enough waste to support the amount of plants that you have growing off of that.
That's perfect. And we actually just had a question come in that I think piggybacks off that very nicely. And that is, are there any diseases or pathogens that can be transferred from the fish to the plants? And they were thinking of maybe like salmonella issues in the terrestrial farms. Is that a thing in aquaponics?
It shouldn't be. I mean, there's not going to be, the diseases that we're going to deal with in plant situations like botrytis or pythium or things like that are traditional plant issues. Those are not going to affect the fish. And I'm not a fish person, but you know, the different diseases that a fish are going to have are not going to translate into plants. Now, Salmonella, E. coli, different diseases like that that we hear stories of in the news, those can be transferred in waste. So if the fish waste was to get on the leaf that you eventually ate and you didn't wash it, then I suppose potentially there's a way for that to transfer down the line. But as you can see in the system, the fish water itself should never really come in contact with the leaf material that you're actually going to consume.
And we've eaten salads from this already, and here I am.
Right.
That's great. And one of the questions that we got that goes along with that really well, Jim, is did your aquaponic lettuce taste any different from the lettuce that you buy at the grocery store?
I just thought it had a great flavor to it. And like, you know, like when, I mean, I can taste this right now, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm telling you right now. And
how's it taste?
a little tomato with it. Oh my gosh, seriously. That is delicious. That tastes just like it was in a summer garden in August. Yeah.
From a plant standpoint, at the end of the day, if you were to give a tomato to a scientist and say, tell me what source the fertilizer that this plant used came from, they wouldn't be able to do it. Because once the plant's roots take that fertilizer up and metabolize it, it doesn't care what source it came from. They're not going to be able to test that fruit and go, oh, you know what, this was grown with fish waste fertilizer as opposed to synthetic salt-based fertilizers or some other organic-based fertilizer. The plant metabolizes fertilizer the same way regardless of the source that it comes from. So assuming that your fertilization is right and balanced and accurate from your aquaponic system, you should have zero difference in the taste of the actual end product.
Great question.
Yes, and thank you, Jem, for that live demonstration. I love it.
Yeah.
All right, Mrs. Reggie's class, this is last call. Do you have any questions that you would like to ask?
Questions?
I felt like we had one in the back row there. He kept raising, he was too polite. He kept raising his hand with a question that I don't know if we got. But maybe.
Did we miss one? Don't be shy, it's okay.
Are there government subsidies provided for aquaculture growers or for schools too?
From a grant standpoint, I mean, there's schools constantly write grants for, currently the Farm Bill and the USDA has a lot of money available for young farmers. So if any of you guys are getting close to graduating and you didn't want to go to continued education, you want to start a farm, you could write a grant as a young farmer. From a school standpoint, there is plenty of money for alternative agriculture methods, and that's what hydroponics and aquaponics fall under, are alternative agriculture methods. So there's a lot of money out there from the federal government that is available if you can write the grant to get it.
And I know those go right at the top of the heap when they see those come in. So, I mean, write those grants. It just takes a little bit of time, but I can't imagine you're not getting the grant.
Thank you. That was a great question. Any other ones? All right. So I just wanted to thank everybody for joining us today. If we don't have any other questions for Mrs. Reggie's class, we're going to talk a little bit about some upcoming events that we have going on at EarthEcho. So the first one is World Water Monitoring Day, which is September 18th. So it's coming up quick. So follow along with us and our team of Young Water Challenge ambassadors as they host events that provide a unique opportunity for communities across the globe to take action, monitor water, and protect their waterways. And just like Mr. Trogdon showed that EarthEcho water testing kit, we do provide those on our website. So you can check those out at monitorwater.org. And this October, we are heading on our first international expedition to Australia. This is EarthEcho Expeditions Plastic Seas. We will be traveling to Melbourne to examine the issues of plastic pollution. Follow along with us as we explore Down Under, October 1st through the 5th, 2018. So thank you everyone for tuning in today. A big thank you to Jim and Paul for being our hosts. And also, thank you so much to our interactive site, Riverview High School. You guys were fabulous and had some amazing questions. There you go. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And as mentioned earlier, EarthEcho Expedition Water by Design explores these issues of water scarcity and drought through free resources. We are asking classrooms around the world to send us your stories of students exploring engineering design around water resource management or developing your own conservation projects with water. If you share your stories with us online, you'll be entered to win a $500 mini grant, which for some of you might be a great start for an aquaponics system. The entry deadline for that is World Water Day 2019, so you have plenty of time to get started. Be sure to tune in to our next virtual field trip featuring STEM experts and their careers for the launch of our newest program, STEM Explore. We will kick off a series of virtual field trips beginning on Tuesday, October 9th, 2018, hosted by EarthEcho's STEM Explore team. You can stay tuned to stemexplore.org for more details to come. So on the behalf of the EarthEcho team, we would like to thank everyone for coming today. Here's our social media information. That's the best way to follow along with our team. We would also like to send well wishes to all of those who are in the path of Hurricane Florence, and we hope that you are all okay. Thank you all for joining us again today. Thank you, Jim and Paul, Coventry Middle, Riverview High School. We appreciate you, and everybody watching from home, thank you so much. This recording will be sent out afterwards and will live on our YouTube page. So if you need to come back and check anything, please do. And we hope that you all have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.